I was the one who saved our family's hotel from the brink of bankruptcy, only to be pushed aside like an outsider. My name is Emma Sullivan. I am 44 years old, and I never thought that at this age, I'd find myself fighting not against the market, but against my own family. My voice echoed through the freshly renovated hotel lobby, every word bouncing off the stone walls and gleaming wooden ceiling. Why is Logan being named CEO? I'm the one who turned this place around, I snapped, not even trying to hide how hurt I was. My mother, her face carrying that all too familiar indifference, just shook her head and waved her hand like swatting away something bothersome. Emma, your brother has stronger leadership qualities. You're too focused on the details. She spoke to me as if I were a child begging for candy. And then Logan, my younger brother by 6 years, walked in. Hands in his pockets, wearing that same half smile I'd seen since high school, the kind that made me want to walk out of the room immediately. Don't take it personally, sis, he said casually. Someone's got to handle the paperwork while I focus on the big picture stuff. I stood there, frozen. After more than 15 years working as a senior manager in a Boston-based hotel chain, I had given it all up to come back to Vermont and rescue what used to be the family's pride, the Maple Ridge Inn. When Dad called one March evening, his voice raspy with emotion, I heard real desperation for the first time in my life. Emma, we've only got enough to keep the place running for 3 more weeks. If nothing changes, we'll have to sell it. I didn't hesitate. Within a week, I submitted my resignation, sold my small condo in South End, and moved back home with every dollar I had saved. Nearly $160,000. Back then, Maple Ridge Inn, it was hard to believe it was once a dream destination back in the 1980s. The carpet was threadbare, the lighting dim, the website outdated, and it wasn't listed on any major booking platforms. Online reviews most sounded like this. Old staff, outdated rooms, not worth the price. I jumped into the work on day one, no time for sipping tea and reminiscing. I made a step-by-step plan: overhaul the reservation system, retrain the entire staff, redesign the restaurant menu, and reconnect with industry partners to rebuild our visibility. Every dollar spent was carefully calculated. I personally picked out the new curtains, lighting, and color palette for each floor. I spent nights hunched over Excel sheets and mornings fixing HVAC units while snow fell in December. I did it all because I believed in one thing: that my family would see the effort I was putting in. And in truth, the hotel transformed completely. After 7 months, bookings had doubled. The local newspaper ran a story praising our comeback. A small regional travel magazine even called the place a polished gem rediscovered. I thought, finally, my parents would be proud, that they would trust me, that they'd officially hand me the reins. But this morning, just before our all-staff meeting, my mother calmly announced, "We've decided to name Logan as CEO. He has a more modern outlook." My brother's modern outlook? He'd bounced through 3 jobs in 2 years, from selling used cars to launching a failed iced tea startup. He had never lasted more than 6 months anywhere. Meanwhile, I had poured my degrees, my experience, and my blood, sweat, and tears into this place, only to be asked to step aside and take on the title of operations supervisor. I looked around the room. Longtime staff, those who'd seen me fix leaking pipes and personally trained front desk employees, were now staring at me with uneasy sympathy. No one said a word, but I could see it in their eyes. They knew. And I knew, too, that no matter what I did, it would never be enough for my parents, simply because I was the daughter and not the golden boy like Logan. I clenched my fists, swallowed the burn in my throat, but somewhere deep inside, something began to shift. Something that perhaps my family had unintentionally awakened. When I decided to return to the small town of Fairhill, Vermont, the place where I'd grown up, Most people thought I'd lost my mind. Leaving your role as VP of Operations at Aurora Hotels to renovate a rundown inn? Emma, are you serious? A former colleague asked me on Zoom, eyes wide in disbelief. I didn't blame them. If I were them, I might have thought the same. But the moment I stepped through the old wooden doors of Maple Ridge Inn, inhaled the musty scent of damp carpet and dust-covered front desk, I didn't feel disappointment. I saw opportunity. An opportunity to prove what had been denied me my entire life. My true worth. I started from scratch. No professional team. No overflowing budget. Not even emotional support from my own parents, just a few reluctant nods at best. But I had one thing money couldn't buy: real experience in hospitality. I made a priority list, replaced the outdated online reservation system. It was so bad it couldn't even load on mobile. I reached out to a group of young interior designers I'd collaborated with back in 2020. They immediately agreed to help, charging only a minimal fee, saying, "Emma, you saved our main hotel project. We've got you." In less than 3 weeks, I had transformed the dull front desk into a warm, open space with maple-toned wood, natural light, and a cozy row of moss-green cushioned chairs. I chose cream-colored curtains to welcome the morning sun, and each room was redesigned to meet boutique standards. Organic comforters, locally roasted coffee, and a guestbook I hand-wrote detailing the hotel's history since the 1980s. I reached out to every contact I had in the travel media industry. A friend at New England Living magazine offered to shoot photos and write a feature on the revival journey of a classic Northeastern inn. A week later, the article titled "A Vintage Hotel, Reborn Under the Vision of a Brilliant Female Director" spread across social media. Guests started pouring in. At first, it was curious locals, then visitors from nearby states like New York and New Hampshire. They left reviews like, "Warm, inviting, feels like grandma's house but more elegant. Emma, the manager, truly understands what guests need." Bookings increased by 2.3 times in just 5 months. The average nightly rate jumped from $68 to $129, and we were still sold out every weekend. I hired additional front desk staff and expanded breakfast service to include our region's signature spiced apple pancakes. And the staff? Oh, they were the unexpected gift. Marcy, the housekeeper in her 60s who once planned to retire because she was too tired of it all, now arrived early every morning, wiping down tables and pinning guest compliments on the bulletin board. Tom, our quiet maintenance guy, suggested for the first time that we offer a winter workshop on DIY scented candles for guests. It felt like the whole team had come back to life along with the hotel, and I thought to myself, surely now Mom and Dad will finally see it. But no. The day I reported that we had exceeded our quarterly revenue goals, Mom asked only one question. "So, when do you plan to start training Logan?" I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At that point, my brother was studying market trends in Austin, which meant posting photos with his new girlfriend by the lake and sipping craft beer. And I, the person who had just turned around a dying business, was seen as nothing more than someone preparing the runway for him. Dad, meanwhile, was even more silent. At dinner one evening, when I mentioned being invited to speak at a Heritage Resort Revival conference in Boston, he just nodded and kept folding his napkin. I understood. Deep down, they had always placed more faith in Logan, not because he was more talented, but simply because he was their son. Many nights, I sat alone in the small third-floor room, Grandma's old room, watching the streetlights spill across the floor and wondered, what am I even fighting for anymore? Had I been too naive to believe that success could make them change? But every morning, when I walked into the lobby and saw guests smiling, saw staff proudly sharing stories about their work, I reminded myself, it's okay, even if they can't see it, I can. Still, Just when I thought things were finally settling down, something happened that sent me down a path I never saw coming. I never imagined I'd one day have to protect someone else's job from my own brother. 3 weeks after that fateful staff meeting, Logan officially took office as general manager. The announcement was held right in the hotel lobby, complete with white wine and almond pastries from the town's upscale bakery. The kind of touch Logan described as brand image elevation. I stood behind the front desk, adjusting our newly upgraded booking software, half listening as my brother gave a speech about next-gen leadership mindset and Gen Z guest experience. All buzzwords, empty and hollow, coming from someone who had never worked a single front desk shift in his life. Logan's first day in the manager's office, he unbuttoned his shirt collar, kicked his feet up on the desk, and declared, "You just keep doing the detail stuff, sis. I'll handle the strategy." His first strategy was to cut the complimentary breakfasts, our highest-rated service at Maple Ridge Inn. Each pancake and juice combo cost almost $4, you know? Cut it, we double the margins, he said, waving around a cost analysis spreadsheet I could tell he'd downloaded off Google. I handed him the guest satisfaction charts. 89% said great breakfast was their reason for returning. 78% mentioned feeling cared for like at home. He just laughed and shrugged. "You're stuck in the past, sis. People like minimalism now." Next up, he changed the staff schedule without warning, causing 2 shifts to overlap and 1 shift to go unmanned. The result? Guests waited nearly 30 minutes to check in on Labor Day weekend. The tipping point came when he called Marcy, our housekeeper of nearly 20 years, into his office and flatly said, "You don't fit the hotel's modern model anymore. It's time to retire." I walked into the room just as Marcy was quietly wiping her tears. I couldn't stay silent. "Logan, she's the heart of this place. Without Marcy, the hotel loses the one thing that makes guests feel truly welcomed." He looked at me, not angry, just smug. "That's why you'll never be a leader. You let emotions cloud your logic." I gripped the armrest tightly, holding back. I knew if I lost my temper in that moment, I'd be pushed out. And this time, for good. That night, I opened my laptop and created a report over 40 pages long. The revenue figures before and after my return. Detailed analysis from major travel review platforms. Staffing conditions and internal satisfaction metrics. Positive feedback from small investors I'd previously worked with. The next morning, I brought that file to my parents' house. "Dad, Mom, I'm not here to complain. I'm here to prove a point," I said, my voice oddly calm. My mother flipped through a few pages, then placed the packet down on the oak table like it was an overly long menu. "Emma, you need to give Logan time. He has his own way of doing things. We can't keep doing everything the old-fashioned way." I turned to my father, the quiet one, but also the one whose opinion always held the most weight. "Dad, you once said the hotel was like a third child. Then why hand it to someone who's never spent a single day taking care of it?" He stared into his steaming cup of tea in silence. After a long pause, he finally murmured, "Every decision has risk. I believe Logan will learn." I stood up, and in my heart I knew one thing for certain. Neither of them wanted to see the truth, especially if that truth meant admitting they had placed their trust in the wrong person. That afternoon, I returned to the hotel. The lobby still carried the warm scent of pine and freshly ground coffee, but I could feel the place shifting. And not in a good way. 3 regular guests emailed complaints about breakfast service being discontinued. One elderly couple left a 1-star review after they had to carry their own luggage up to the 3rd floor because there was no staff on duty that night. I started hearing staff whisper, "Emma's the one who really understands this place." And guests began to ask me, "Are you still staying long? This hotel's only worth coming to because of you." I didn't know exactly what was coming next, but I had a strong feeling. Logan wasn't just hurting this place. He was going to bring it down. And this time, I wasn't sure I wanted to save it. I had rebuilt a hotel from the ashes. Now, it was time to rebuild myself. That afternoon, after Logan suddenly canceled the contract with our local bakery to DIY frozen pastries from a big box grocery chain, I had to quietly leave the office, just to avoid breaking down in front of my staff. I drove aimlessly along a winding mountain road, heading north of town. The wind howled through the fiery red maples, each bend in the road pulling me farther from Maple Ridge, farther from all those years I spent chasing recognition. And then I saw it. A crooked wooden sign hanging by the roadside, the lettering faded. For sale, Cedar Creek Lodge. Contact 800-22-XXXXX. I hit the brakes on instinct. Cedar Creek Lodge, a former rival of my family's hotel. Nestled by Cedar Lake, just over a 2-minute drive from the main ski lift, with a deeper history than even Maple Ridge. I remembered as a child the wealthier guests always chose Cedar Creek, but for the past 10 years, the property had slipped into disrepair. The former owners lacked the funds to keep it going. I pulled over and stepped out. The breeze carried the scent of rotting wood and damp moss. But as I peered into the lobby through the foggy glass, I didn't see decay. I saw potential. Tall, pitch ceiling, original brass chandeliers still intact, weathered hardwood floors that, though worn, were solid. And in the back, a neglected garden that could become a stunning outdoor spa retreat with the right care. I dialed the number on the sign. The owners, an elderly couple living in Bangor, Maine, were eager to sell. No one in their family wanted to take over. 1 week later, I was signing the purchase agreement for Cedar Creek Lodge, using the remainder of my savings and a commercial loan I qualified for thanks to my strong credit history. No one in my family knew, and I had no intention of telling them. Every night, after the lights at Maple Ridge went dark, I stayed up redrawing floor plans, quietly mapping out what I would later call my second resurrection. But this time, it would be mine, and mine alone. I named the new hotel Haven Hollow. Not flashy, not extravagant, just a name that fit the vision. Peaceful, private, and undeniably first class. The first person I called was Marcy. "Would you be willing to try again?" I asked. "At a place where your voice actually matters." She stayed quiet for a long moment, then said softly like a breeze, "Emma, you already know the answer." Next came Tom, the young technician who had quietly endured Logan's absurd changes. Then, Jesse, the front desk manager, who once told me, "You're the reason I've stayed here this long." One by one, they texted, "I'm quitting. See you at Haven Hollow." Word about the wave of resignations began to spread around town. Some called me a traitor. Others whispered, "Finally, someone dares to step out of that shadow." But I didn't care. I knew exactly what I was doing. I reached out to former vendors I had worked with back in Boston. And organic mattress supplier. A premium interior lighting design firm. A chef who used to be my sous chef, now running a hotel menu consulting service. They all said yes. I chose a color palette of beige, olive green, and natural wood. Soft lighting, cedarwood-scented candles in every room, a lakeside spa service, and most notably, I designed a no-schedule room, a space where guests could simply sit, admire the mountains, listen to soft music, and do whatever they wanted. 1 month later, Logan sent me an email. No greeting, just 2 short lines. "Heard you're building an empire? Don't let your emotions ruin you again." I read it and smiled faintly. I didn't respond. I was too busy building something no one could take away from me. 6 months after laying the first brick of Haven Hollow, I knew I had made the right call, not just the right one, the timely one. On opening day, a light snowfall unexpectedly dusted the rooftops and lakeside garden of Fair Hill. But that didn't stop guests from lining up at the gate. Crystal chandeliers inside glowed warm and golden, casting light over olive green walls and hand-stitched tapestries made by local artisans. No one could believe Haven Hollow had once been a run-down, abandoned hotel. Now it had become a new shining star in Vermont's hospitality scene. We didn't need massive billboards. We had something no sign could ever replicate: emotion. Guests entered to the scent of cedarwood, the soft melody of piano from the lobby corner, and a warm welcome from Marcy, now our guest experience manager. She beamed with pride as she said, "Welcome to Haven Hollow. Here you're not just guests, you're part of this space." I kept my original promise. Haven Hollow would be a place where everything once rejected at Maple Ridge was now celebrated. A lakeside reading nook. Early morning, forest meditation sessions, led by Jesse. A rotating, seasonal breakfast menu using organic ingredients from nearby farms. I had proposed all of these to Logan once. His response? Too time-consuming, not on trend. You're obsessed with little things that don't matter. And yet now, those very little things were what guests shared the most on social media. Haven Hollow appeared on the cover of Northeast Escape magazine with the headline, "From Ruin to Remarkable, the woman who turned rejection into a masterpiece." Soon after, we were nominated for the Best Boutique Hotel in New England award. I saw my name on the shortlist and felt a rush of emotions, part joy, part sorrow. Because while Haven Hollow was rising to glory, Maple Ridge Lodge was in freefall. Complaints came in from everywhere. One evening, I scrolled through TripAdvisor and froze at a one-star review that read, "This place used to feel lovely. Now it's chaotic and unprofessional. The new manager is rude, never coming back." Breakfast was cold, and no staff seemed to know the schedule. Not worth the price. Meanwhile, Logan was still online posting bar check-ins and recording leadership mindset podcasts, as if nothing was happening. I heard through Tom, who still had friends on the old maintenance team, that the third-floor water heater had been broken for over 3 weeks, and no one came to fix it despite guest complaints. Jesse told me that on Thanksgiving night, 3 families checked in, and only 1 staff member was on duty. What hurt more was realizing my parents were starting to feel uneasy. They never said it outright, but I saw it in my mother's eyes during a small-town gathering. She looked at me silently, then quickly turned away. Then the big award came. At the gala in Boston, surrounded by hundreds of hospitality professionals from across the Northeast, the host's voice rang out. "This year's Best Boutique Hotel. Congratulations to Haven Hollow and Executive Director Emma Sullivan." The room erupted in applause. Marcy burst into tears. Tom hugged me. Jesse exclaimed, "You did it, Emma. We did it." I walked up to the stage in my deep emerald velvet gown, the lights shining on a face that had spent years buried in spreadsheets. For the first time in my life, I stood tall, looked everyone in the eye, and said, "This success didn't come from a grand decision. It came from believing in the little things others overlooked." As I stepped down, a reporter whispered in my ear, "You know, I actually thought Maple Ridge would win, but they weren't even nominated." I simply smiled. Not bitterly, just with understanding. Because they chose the wrong person. And I was no longer the one waiting to be chosen. I always knew this day would come. Expect it. This soon. On the first Saturday of March, after wrapping up a morning meeting with the front desk team at Haven Hollow, Sarah, my assistant, rushed into the office. "Emma, there are 2 people waiting for you in the lobby. I think it's your parents." I looked up, my heart skipping a beat. It had been nearly a year and a half since that silent dinner, when I refused to go back to being Logan's support. Since then, no one in my family had mentioned me. No calls, no texts, no apologies. I walked out to the lobby. My mother, Evelyn, was as polished as ever, clutching her beige leather purse. My father, Charles, looked thinner, with more gray in his hair. He avoided my eyes. My mother spoke, voice carefully composed. "We need to talk." I led them into the side meeting room, the small space where I usually met with partners. I didn't serve tea, I didn't make it cozy. I simply sat down and waited. My father looked around the elegant space, his gaze a mix of admiration and nostalgia. "This place is beautiful," he said softly. "Your hotel, it's becoming famous around here." I nodded slightly. "Is that why you're here?" My mother clasped her hands tightly. She didn't speak right away. She turned to my father as if hoping he'd speak first. In the end, it was she who did. "Mo, we admit, things at Maple Ridge are worse than we thought." "Logan?" "He's not able to turn it around anymore. Investors are threatening to pull out, the new loan application was denied, and the tax office is reviewing our records." I said nothing. I wasn't surprised. "We want you to come back," my father said quietly. "Guide him again, like you did the first time." I let out a small smile. Not bitter, but the smile of someone who finally saw things clearly. The first time, I didn't guide Logan, Dad. I rebuilt the entire hotel, every screw, every invoice. I saved it, alone, and then all that work was handed to Logan just because he's the son. My mother started to interrupt, but I raised my hand. "Please, let me finish. You don't need me, you need a cleaner." I said it without bitterness, just truth. My father lowered his head. My mother trembled slightly, but this time there were no tears. I think she knew I was right. "Emma, if not for the family, then do it for the legacy, for the reputation your grandfather built. That hotel has stood for over 60 years. Can you really let it collapse?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "I tried to protect that legacy, but our family didn't choose me. And now, I've made my own choice." I stood up, walked over to a drawer, and pulled out a slim folder. "This is a list of financial consultants and hotel crisis management firms. There's also a short-term restructuring proposal for Maple Ridge." I placed it on the table and slid it toward them. "This is all I can offer, but I will not return. I won't be Logan's shadow again." No one said a word for a long time. At last, my father gave a slight nod. His eyes carried a weariness I had never seen before. "You've gone too far, Emma. Farther than any of us ever imagined." I responded gently but firmly. "It's not that I've gone far, it's that none of you ever saw where I was standing." They left in silence. The door closed with no arguments, no anger, just a clear ending. I looked out the window. The snow had started to melt, revealing patches of fresh green grass. Maybe, finally, spring had arrived. For the first time in years, I wasn't living to be seen. I was living to be myself. After that final meeting with my parents at Haven Hollow, I didn't feel immediate relief. In fact, I spent the next week staring at the ceiling each night, thinking about my father's last words. "You've gone too far." Yes, I had gone far from them. But not to rebel, to save myself. I had spent nearly my entire adult life trying to prove I was worthy. With every project I led, every award I received, I used to wonder, will they see me now? But now, I no longer needed them to see. I began learning how to set boundaries, not just with my parents, but with myself. I no longer felt the need to explain why I stepped down from the town's tourism board, or why I skipped the wedding of a former acquaintance who once mocked me for opening Haven Hollow. I gave myself permission to choose the relationships that nourished me. Each morning, I walked around Cedar Lake, where the mist still hovered over the water, and the ducks glided silently across the surface, as if guarding the peace of this entire land. From afar, I looked at Haven Hollow, a small but sturdy building crafted with my own hands, my own tears, and my own courage. And I knew I had built something I never had in my own family, a real home, not just a hotel. Haven Hollow had become a haven for people who had once been overlooked, underestimated, like me. Marcy, once dismissed by Logan as outdated, now led a customer service training program that other hotels in the region came to study. Tom, the quiet maintenance guy, had invented an eco-friendly lighting and temperature control system that got featured in a hospitality tech journal. And Jesse, who was once labeled unprofessional just for crying after being forced to switch shifts suddenly, now led our HR department with flexible policies she personally designed. I hadn't just built a hotel. I had built a culture, a way of living. In the following year, Haven Hollow didn't just win 2 more awards, Most Innovative Retreat Space and Customer Service That Inspires. It also became the venue for workshops aimed at female entrepreneurs, young people pursuing hospitality, and employees laid off due to downsizing. I stood on stage during those events and spoke candidly. Sometimes, you don't need someone to open the door for you. You need to build your own. I didn't mention my parents. I didn't mention Logan. I no longer needed to. Then, one summer afternoon, while I was watering the lavender and the planters along the hallway, Sarah, my trusted assistant, walked over with an envelope in her hand. "Emma, you have a letter from Logan?" I froze. I opened the letter. His handwriting was still messy, just like when we were kids, but this time it was short and clear. I don't know what to say, but I think I finally understand why you left. And why this place could never keep you. If there's ever a time, I'm ready to start learning from the beginning. Logan. I folded the letter. I didn't cry. Forgiveness doesn't always come with a hug. Sometimes it just needs letting go. And I had let go. That night, as I sat in my reading room, with pine-paneled walls, warm yellow lighting, and my favorite armchair, I opened my to-do list and crossed off the last item. Be recognized by the family. It had once been my dream. But now it no longer mattered. I had been recognized by myself. And that was enough. I had once dreamed of a moment like this. But reality turned out even more beautiful than the dream. That night, Haven Hollow was announced as the winner of the highest honor at the New England Travel and Hospitality Awards. Boutique Hotel of the Year Experiential Innovation category. The conference room at the Grand Oak Hotel in Boston was lit brilliantly. My hands trembled slightly as I rose from the front row, surrounded by thunderous applause and the proud gazes of those who had walked this journey with me. Marcy gripped my hand tightly, her eyes red. Jesse placed a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "This is for you, and for everyone who was never given a chance." I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight shining directly on my face, but I didn't feel blinded. On the contrary, I felt clearer than ever that I was truly being seen, being heard, no longer through the lens of family hierarchy or bias. Just me. Emma Sullivan. The woman who believed that small things could make a big difference. Held the mic and took a deep breath. I don't think I'm standing here tonight because I'm the best. I'm here because I didn't give up, even when no one stood with me. Haven Hollow was built from things once labeled pointless, unnecessary. But it's kindness, attention to detail, and sincerity that make people stay. The entire room went silent. Then the applause returned, louder than before. I bowed my head in thanks, but my eyes involuntarily drifted to the back of the room, where I saw 2 faces I never expected to appear: my parents. My father stood still, hands in the pockets of his worn suit jacket. My mother held her beige handbag, standing tall, but her eyes were red. They didn't wave, they didn't call my name. But in their gaze was the recognition I had once thought I would never receive. After the ceremony, as I returned to the hotel's private banquet room with my team to celebrate, I noticed a bouquet of white roses on the table with a handwritten note. "Congratulations, Emma. You've done something we never even dared to dream. Mom and Dad." I picked up the card and read it 3 times. No apologies, no explanations. But for the first time, they used my name in a congratulatory note, without a single but. And that was enough. More than enough. That entire evening, my team raised their glasses, laughed loudly, and shared every funny disaster from the early days of renovating the hotel. The day Jesse spilled an entire can of paint in the lobby. The time Tom forgot to turn on the spa heater in the middle of winter. Or when our first international guest arrived and Marcy stumbled over her English, then both of them laughed and became friends. We weren't just coworkers. We were a chosen family, not bound by blood but by trust and respect. When I returned to my room and opened the door, the clock was nearing 1 a.m. I sat by the window, looking out over Boston's glowing streets, and suddenly realized I didn't need to run anymore. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. I thought back to the Emma at 32, struggling in Boston, crying in a bathroom stall after a male boss told her, "You're too sensitive to lead." I remembered the Emma at 37, calling her mother in the middle of the night just to say, "I'm tired, but I won't give up." And I remembered every minute of that first year at Haven Hollow when I wasn't sure I could make it. But I didn't stop. Now, that same woman sat here, strong, calm, and full of love. I no longer measured success by awards, 5-star ratings, or revenue, but by the feeling I had every morning, knowing I was living in alignment with who I truly am. I used to think the most beautiful ending would be the day my parents apologized, Logan felt remorse, and our family reunited over dinner like nothing had ever fractured us. But the most beautiful thing turned out to be that I no longer needed any of that to feel happy. I had chosen the harder path, but it was the right one. And in every step forward, I had found myself.